This is case study number 1, the accreditation team, submitted by Georgiana Laws, Candace Anthony, and Matt Newland. Christine Winchester is a faculty member in the voice department at Southwestern State University. She is the youngest member of the faculty and is also the only faculty member with a PhD. When the department was created over 30 years ago, professional performers were recruited as faculty. To entice them to relocate to a rural area of the American Southwest, individuals were offered positions and granted tenure despite the lack of an advanced degree. Christine's colleagues view her with suspicion and believe their art can only be learned through performance, not in the classroom. At the end of her first year, the department chair, Dr. Leroy, asked Christine to lead the committee to renew the department's accreditation with the National Association of Schools of Music. Christine appreciates Dr. Leroy's faith in her, but she is skeptical that her peers will see her as a leader for this important responsibility. However, as a faculty member, Christine must participate in university committees and advance the university's reputation. Taking this into consideration, Christine accepts the position. Christine believes that the best approach is to have each faculty member revise and update the sections they offered for the previous accreditation application 10 years ago. At the first meeting, she hands out the sections, details each person's responsibilities, and sets the next meeting for a month later. At the next meeting, though, it is clear that none of the faculty have followed her instructions. Instead, they have simply inserted new dates and submitted the exact same reports. Frustrated but not defeated, Christine tries a different tactic. She meets with each faculty member individually to build a better relationship and learn about each member's contributions and accomplishments over the last 10 years. She works with the faculty individually to revise and update their section of the final report, giving each new deadlines by which to submit their revisions. It takes nearly a full year, but the report is completed and SSU is granted reaccreditation for another 10 years. At the final meeting, Christine thanks and praises the team members for their work both individually and collectively.
At this point, we're going to switch gears and direct our attention to the literature. We're going to lift up a couple of theories and best practices from the literature on team leadership. And we're hoping that we can use these elements as different lenses through which to analyze the case of the accreditation team.
In previous modules of this course, we were introduced to and discussed the various individual or vertical leadership approaches, such as the trait, skills, and style approaches, to name a few. This particular case requires us to look at it from a team or shared leadership approach. The type of leadership someone displays serves as a model for accepted and expected behaviors of the team members. Recent research has identified transformational and transactional leadership behaviors as being those that best predict the outcomes of a team. Transformational leadership behavior involves increasing the motivation of its team members, while transactional leadership behavior involves tapping into the self-interest of the team members. An example of transformational behavior would be a leader who speaks to the goals and vision of a project versus rewarding a team member for participating, which would be an example of transactional leadership. Organizations are incorporating shared leadership over vertical leadership now more than ever. So it is important for us to be aware not only of our individual leadership, but how individual leadership affects team leadership. The interactions between individual leadership and team leadership are multifaceted, with these interactions being dependent upon the chosen or identified leadership style of each member of the team, as well as other characteristics specific to teams in general. Team leadership is most commonly displayed through temporary organizations such as projects, workshops, and/or task force. Tyson and colleagues identified 5 characteristics of these temporary organizations that could result in potential challenges amongst a group, specifically when the groups are functioning within a permanent organization. They go on to note that because teams are typically assembled for a short, specific amount of time, involve tasks that are not routine of its members, and have members that hold a variety of roles and experiences, that there is a higher uncertainty and risk in terms of the tasks and processes that the group is able to perform. The first of the 5 team characteristics is the temporariness of the team. Hogel and colleagues identified three different phases teams progress through when they are placed together for the purposes of reaching an identified goal. First is the conception phase, in which the team sets and outlines its goals and objectives. This is followed by the organizing phase, in which the team gathers resources and determines logistics. The final phase is accomplishment phase, where members actively collaborate to achieve their goal. The difficulties that present themselves with this characteristic is if and when team members are not allowed the time to fully develop positive relationships because the project itself is time limited. Members may also experience higher demands and stress because of other tasks they are obligated to fulfill within their formal positions in the organization. The second characteristic of the team involves its uniqueness of the project itself or the unique outcomes it has been asked to accomplish. These specific purposes are, again, separate from the day-to-day operations its members are asked to fulfill. The uniqueness of the team is possible because of the varying knowledge, skills, and abilities of its team members. The difficulties or challenges that may present themselves with this characteristic involves the high level of creativity that is needed for the project. Because the team members may not have had the ability or the opportunity to develop relationships amongst each other, they are unaware of how to fully utilize the strengths of its team members, which may hinder any creative collaborations that could result across the team members in the room. This is especially disheartening to the organization if the members were specifically placed together because of the potential possibilities. Furthermore, attempts to figure out how to best use the strengths of each other may eat away at an amount of time that is already restricted. The third characteristic of the team is the lack of a formal hierarchy. These missing or ambiguous hierarchies of the team can occur as a result of 1. The members' alliance to their formal supervisor, and 2. The identified team member only being in leadership for a temporary amount of time. The challenges that come with this characteristic include the potential presence of an authority gap, which could be the result of team members fumbling to figure out who is going to take charge in the team. This becomes even more difficult if the team members are from similar or lateral positions within the organization. This lack of hierarchy could also affect the team's ability to effectively come together should this fumble carry over into the project. The fourth characteristic of the team is the potential for changing team dynamics. We are all familiar with Tuckman and Jensen's group dynamic theory, which identifies 5 stages of the group process as forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. Difficulties that can present themselves as a result of this characteristic could cost the team its ability to build an effective cohesiveness due to the constant shifting of the group. Every time the group dynamics change, it could cost the group more time, lessening the amount of time the team has to focus on the task at hand, and each shift in the group dynamic could cause the team to return to the first stage in the process. The fifth and final characteristic of the team is the heterogeneity of the team members. Each team member was asked to come together because of the various knowledge, skills, and abilities they have, and the experience they can bring to the team. This was discussed earlier under the unique characteristics of the team. However, difficulty can present itself in the way team members communicate with each other, as they may not have the same understanding as their teammate because they work in varying capacities and fields. The team is also limited to the experience and knowledge of the team members, so the creativity level needed to accomplish the task may be hindered to the abilities of those in the team.
Middle leadership is a challenging place to be. Sandwiched between those at the top, who handle life and death matters for the organization, and those at the bottom, who feel powerless and invisible, middle leadership has to please both bosses and subordinates in order to survive. They have to foster the individuality and idiosyncratic strengths of others, while at the same time making sure that the entire team is moving forward in the same direction. Often they are left feeling torn, stressed, indecisive, and unable to satisfy anyone adequately. These mid level academic leaders sit in the middle among top leadership, faculty, staff, students, alumni, boards, accrediting agencies, and so on, and they have to function both within the world of academia and the world of administrative performance. Effectively leading from the middle involves spending a lot of time facilitating, selling, and encouraging rather than controlling and implementing. In order to successfully lead from the middle, academic administrators need to function as informal educators and diplomats, traveling back and forth between the two different worlds, facilitating mutual learning and productive agreements. The same event can look differently through the eyes of various stakeholders, and all of them can be right. Therefore, it is important that we complain less, talk more openly and directly, and be more tolerant. Here are 3 strategies that Bowman and Gallus recommend. Strategy 1. Listen, understand, and respect differences. When leading from the middle, we may be tempted to distance ourselves from one party in order to better serve the needs of the other party. However, the best course of action is not to take sides, but to listen to both sides. Try to understand where they come from, respecting divergent opinions, and finding the possibilities at the intersection of thought differences. There is much to be learned from those who see things differently than we do. Strategy 2. Look for mutual gains. In their 1981 bestseller book Getting to Yes, Roger Fisher and William Ury described a 4-step strategy. Step 1. Separate the people from the problem. Step 2. Focus on interests, not positions. Step 3. Invent a variety of options before deciding what to do. And step 4. Insist on objective and mutually agreed upon criteria to make the decision. Strategy 3. Stay alert to system dynamics and take a new leadership stand. Sales's 2008 systems theory suggests acting like a top when you can, thus recognizing and using the power that you have. Being at the bottom when you have to, thus recognizing and saying no when something won't work. Enlisting and coaching others, thus empowering them to do their work and fix their own problems. Being a facilitator, thus helping people in conflict find a way to work together. Finding support and solace in peers, thus connecting with others in the middle. Life in the middle can be a squeeze, yet from the middle position stems the opportunity to facilitate relationships and bring divergent needs together in support of institutional advancement. Bowman and Galos propose 7 rules when leading difficult people. Rule 1. Assess the full situation. To determine if the other person is genuinely difficult or if a particular situation is bringing out the worst in them, look at the problematic behavior and try to distinguish between chronic and consistent versus situational. If the behavior is situational, it may be possible to avert conflict by changing the circumstances. Rule number 2. Look in the mirror. When others seem uncooperative, they probably think that you may be the problem, and sometimes they could be right. It is therefore important to do some soul searching, asking yourself or someone you trust if there is anything that you're doing that might be producing or prolonging the difficulty. Rule number 3, befriend the challenge. This is a good diagnostic tool to determine if the other person can respond to rational dialogue. In reaching out to the person causing you pain, you might be able to identify reasonable actions that can reduce their frustration and provide a positive way forward. Rule number 4, unhook. Sometimes conflict comes when people push our emotional buttons. First, realize that you're getting hooked. Then try to understand the pattern that seems to set you off. And finally, develop and practice alternative ways of responding that help you manage your feelings and helps you stay focused on the task. Rule number 5, set expectations. Sometimes difficulties come from the absence of clear norms of conduct or expectations for performance. It is therefore important to set standards, communicate them clearly, and hold people accountable for meeting those standards. Rule number 6, get help. Seeking support is not admitting defeat. Asking for advice and looking for allies when you deal with unusually difficult people is a good strategy. The person who bothers you may be creating trouble for other people as well, and working with others allows for a more effective and coordinated response. Rule number 7: divorce if necessary. If you are dealing with a person who is not open to dialogue, unwilling to learn, or may have some deep psychological or personal problems, and if the previous 6 rules fail to yield results, that is an indication that it may be time to consider reassignment or discharge. If you feel that is necessary, accept the reality, act with as much grace and sensitivity as possible, and move forward. In his bestseller book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie shares strategies for getting cooperation. Here are 3 stories from his book. Colonel Edward House found a way to influence President Woodrow Wilson. He casually planted an idea that would interest the president. The president then considered that idea for a few days and then presented it as his own. House did not care for credit. He was happy to see the results, and he even gave the president public credit for those results. Colonel House's technique works because we're all human, as President Woodrow Wilson. In another example, Eugene Wesson is a sketch salesperson for a New York studio, producing designs for stylists and manufacturers. For years, he called the leading stylist each week, and although the client never refused to see Eugene, he also never bought anything. 150 meetings later, Eugene stops, reads about influencing human behavior, and then tries a new approach. He takes unfinished sketches to his client, asks him to finalize the sketches. The client takes a few days to look at the sketches and then hands them back to Eugene and purchases all of them. From that point on, the client kept buying. Next, Eugene used an even more radical approach. He started asking the client for ideas from the very beginning. The client came up with ideas and then bought all the sketches. That is because we all love to be consulted about our wishes, wants, and thoughts. And a final example. A hospital in Brooklyn, New York is building an addition and needs to equip it with X-ray machines. Amid the flood of offers from companies praising their X-ray machines, one manufacturer writes a letter to the hospital talking about a new line of equipment that is not perfect, but the manufacturer asks the hospital to try out the new machines and provide feedback for how they can be modified to best suit the needs of the hospital. The sales rep also offers to send a car to get the X-ray department lead to the factory. The department head takes the offer, considers the X-ray machine, and he likes it. He orders the equipment and the install, feeling that he himself sold himself on the superior qualities of the equipment. The moral of the story is that no one likes feeling that they're being sold something. Rather, we prefer feeling that we're buying out of our own accord. The HEAL model for team leadership stems from the premise that it is the leader's responsibility to monitor the team and to take action as necessary to ensure team effectiveness. This tool helps us understand the complex phenomenon of team leadership and serves as a decision-making aid for both leaders and team members. An effective leader is flexible, has a wide repertoire of action and skills to meet the diverse needs of the team, can correctly diagnose the team's problems as well as its environmental and organizational contexts, and can choose the right course of action to solve these problems. The first stage in Hill's model begins with leadership decisions. First, we need to ask ourselves if we should monitor the team or take action. If we choose to monitor, internally we are diagnosing work deficiencies, and externally we are forecasting any environmental changes that can affect the group. If we choose to take action, internally we are taking action to remedy the situation, or externally we are preventing any negative environmental changes from hurting the team. All team members can be involved in monitoring and, through shared leadership, help the team adapt to changing conditions. Hasty-to-act leaders may offer immediate damage control, but they might not pick the best intervention because they do not have all the information. Slow-to-act leaders may encourage shared leadership, but the delay in taking action might spin the problem out of control. Some advocate for using motivational coaching at the start, consultative coaching at the midpoint, and educational coaching at the end. The second leadership decision in Hill's model is whether to intervene toward the task or toward relational needs. Going back to the 4 frames, we are deciding between a structural or human resource frame of reference. We certainly know that experienced team leadership focuses on both task and relational functions. A team with good interpersonal relationships is more effective in meeting the task. Similarly, when a team is productive meeting the task, it is probably also fostering a positive climate. When teams fail to perform, they're also probably having poor relationships with each other. Additionally, a challenge with virtual teams is that the team leader must be able to read obvious as well as subtle personal and contextual nuances in an electronic environment. The third leadership decision in Hill's model is the choice of internal or external intervention. Is there internal conflict between team members? If so, internal relational action is needed. Are the team's goals unclear? If so, an internal task intervention is needed. Is the organizational environment not supporting the team as needed? If so, an external environmental intervention is needed. The second part of Hill's team leadership model focuses on specific leadership actions to be performed internally or externally. These lists are research-based but are not exhaustive. When it comes to the first type of internal leadership actions, the task piece looks at suggestions for how the leader might improve task performance. For instance, if the team challenge is that it is operating on a fuzzy goal, then the leader's best course of action might be focusing that goal, and so on with the other tasks of structuring for results, facilitating decision-making, training team members in task skills, and maintaining standards of excellence. When it comes to the second type of internal leadership actions, the relational piece shows suggestions for how the leader might improve team relationships. For instance, if team members are not listening to one another, the leader's best course of action might be to engage the team members in a listening exercise, and so on with the other relations of collaborating, managing conflict and power issues, building commitment and esprit de corps, satisfying individual member needs, and molding ethical and principled practices. When it comes to the external leadership actions, the environmental piece shows how the leader might improve how the team interfaces with its environment. For instance, if team members are not well known or connected throughout the organization, the team's best course of action might be to formalize relationships with powerful and respected stakeholders in the organization, and so on with the environmental aspects of advocating and representing the team to the environment, negotiating upward to secure the necessary resources, support, and recognition for the team, buffering team members from environmental distractions, assessing environmental indicators of team effectiveness, and sharing relevant environmental information with the team. The third and last part of Hill's team leadership model focuses on team effectiveness or the desired outcomes of teamwork. Performance has to do with getting the job done, while development has to do with maintaining a cohesive team. Excellent teams attain both of these objectives. Research has identified enabling conditions that lead to effective team functioning, namely a clear, elevating goal, a results-driven structure, competent team members, unified commitment, collaborative climate, standards of excellence, external support and recognition, as well as principled leadership. The strengths of Hill's leadership model include focusing on the real-life organizational work group and its leadership, placing the team in an environmental context, and emphasizing team performance and effectiveness. The model empowers leaders when it comes to critical functions of diagnosis and action taking. Leadership responsibilities such as setting goals, coaching, and rewarding are often distributed across the team through shared leadership. At the same time, the model has been criticized for leaving out many skills that leadership might use in making decisions. The tool also fails to provide information about the best timing to intervene or what to say to a team member who is distressed, what action to take when organizational culture does not support teamwork, and so forth. Another criticism is that both team members and the leader need to possess requisite leadership skills. There are many ways to apply Hill's model to increase team effectiveness. Leaders can use it in making decisions for the team. Leaders might also invite team members to take the Team Excellence and Collaborative Team Leadership Questionnaire, which we took early in our course, comparing the scores to determine which dimensions of team or leadership effectiveness need improvement.
Please take a few minutes to review Hill's Model for Team Leadership on page 132 of the Northouse and Lee textbook. Based on Hill's model, what leadership decisions did Christine make when deciding whether to intervene in her team's functioning? Please post your answer on the discussion board. For example, you might argue that Christine engaged in internal leadership actions by managing conflict. Instead of taking a confrontational approach with a faculty who did not follow her instructions, Christine took a relational approach by getting to know each faculty member on a personal level.